Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Dear all teachers and practitioners, right now is Saturday afternoon, January 4th, 2025. We continue with the topic, the genuine wise teachers. So when we talked about the wise teachers, we might be succumb to discrimination or duality, like the sixth patriarch said in the Platform Sutra. If we don't move away from duality, we won't be able to reach the true, the genuine, the absolute status. But when we try to talk about it, it's still within duality because the words can only describe to a certain level. So when we talk about the genuine wise teachers, we shouldn't use discrimination or between subject or object to measure the genuine wise teachers. When we talked about them, we are using the prajna, skillful means, and raise the prajna contemplation, or we can say other way, we're practicing. Another example is talking about our body. The healthy state is also for this body. And then the sick state is also from this body. In order for the healthy state to manifest, to show up, we have to, treat the sickness state. Only when we end the illusion, then the wisdom will show up, It's just like the sun is always there. It's just when the sun is covered by the cloud or the earth or the moon, then we cannot see it, but the sun is always there. So when we talk about the sun shining, it's just like talking about our self nature, or we can also say we're referring to the healthy state of our body. It's just because right now we are in a sick state. That's why we couldn't see the healthy state. Just like the Buddha said, the self nature, the Buddha nature is always there, always complete. It's just because of our delusion that we couldn't see it. Once we clear up our illusion, we can finally see our true nature. Right now, we are still within our ignorance and attachment. That's why we attach to this body. We consider this body as ourselves, But this body is only within a limited time, even if we live up until 100 years old, it's still a limited time. When we compare that to the heavenly being, they have a much longer expectancy than us, but it's still limited, once it still have to come to an end. That's why when the Buddha give rise to the Bodhi mind. He didn't seek any of the blessings within the human or the heavenly realms. But he only want to seek to give rise to the Bodhi mind, to reach the ultimate liberation. Because we attach to our body, that's why we are influenced and get stuck within birth and death. And once we get stuck in this birth and death or attached to our body, we will have to experience the suffering of, birth, old age, sickness, and death. And, the more we cling on to this body, the more we will feel fearful when we have to face old age, sickness, and death. For the wise people, they figure out from the birth and death they figure out how many sufferings this life is, and then from there they seek liberation. And all of those are still within the prajna skillful means. The wise people will be able to see the function of all of those skillful means. Just like the Buddha always teaches us, the Bodhisattva is fearful of the cause, but the sentient beings are fearful of the effects. Most sentient beings are illusioned. That's why they easily get stuck within birth and death. And because of their illusion, they created a lot of bad karmas without knowing. And once the retribution comes up, they feel very fearful. That's why the Buddha said, the sentient beings are fearful of the effects, while the Bodhisattva, they knows that the cause is not real, and that's why they shouldn't attach to those cause, and they should only keep the cause, the seeds of the prajna. So we can see the difference between the wise people and the delusion people, who when they look at the same thing. So actually the wise teachers are not anywhere far. Sometimes it's right within us. So how could we grow the seeds of the wise teacher within us in order for us to be close to the way? And if we nourish that seeds of prajna, then ultimately we will reach enlightenment one day. So right now, for us to seek the learning within our practice, so when we're practicing, we still have a lot of we could still make a lot of mistakes. That's why we still need to seek out the teaching a lot. That's why the patriarch said, when we are delusion, we need to rely on the three jewels, the teachers, the co-practitioners. And once we get enlightened, get awakened, we can rely on ourselves. So anyone have any questions about the practice, feel free to bring it up. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Kim Yến, please.
Dạ, Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Con
Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, dear master, all teachers and practitioners.
Khi mà nghe lại cái bài pháp của Hòa Thượng Duy Lực khai thị về cái chỗ mà
When I listen to the Dharma of Master Wei Li again
vào cái sao việc
about the leader of the enemy, could you please explain more about this? When we said to use the soldiers of the enemy in order to go into their area to catch the leader. So that means we use the we use our thought that's still within our ignorance. So meaning we use our consciousness, our knowledge, or our prajna, skillful means. If we know how to use it, it will be a skillful means. But if we don't know how to use it, it can backfire on us. So same thing for us right now. Instead of like looking outward and going after all of the comparison and discrimination, whether happiness or sadness, all of those are within our consciousness. And that's why we call each of those thoughts are ignorant thoughts, because each of those thoughts like affect us, manipulate us. That's why we call it afflictions or ignorant thoughts. Like, because why we call those afflictions, because originally those thoughts could be happy thought and then later on turn into a lot of afflictions. So all of our thoughts are still, one after another, leading us to multiple experience. So now when we do meditation, we use that consciousness, our knowing and not knowing. Some people, said they rather not knowing than knowing, so they don't feel the suffering. But actually, either way, because it's still within our ignorant thought, it's still going to lead to suffering. So when we use those thoughts, all of those discriminative thoughts, if we know how to use it, it can help lead us to the non-discriminative thoughts. So when we utilize the consciousness in order to generate the thought of non-discrimination, that is the doubt. That's what it means to take advantage of the soldier of the enemy in order to go straight into their area, So meaning when we do meditation, we maintain one thought only, the thought of that help us reach the doubt. That thought will help us clear up all of the other ignorant thoughts. So the thought of the doubt, the thought that we want to know but cannot know, will help, break off all of our ignorance and attachment. First, the doubt will help break off the discrimination, and later on, the enlightenment will end the doubt. So that's why we utilize those ignorant thoughts in order to end the source of our ignorance. That means we use the soldier of the enemy to, catch the leader of the enemy. And once the source of our ignorance fall apart, then we get to our enlightenment. Or another example that the patriarch give is, if we want to kill a tree, for example, the ignorant tree, we need to uproot it in order for it to die. If we only target the branch of the tree, or even if we target near the root, when the weather is good, the tree is gonna grow back again. It's because the root of the tree is still there, the root of the ignorance still there. So our practice is how to bring ourselves back to the source of our attachment and ignorance, or another word is the source of our birth and death. So we use our consciousness in order to get to the source of the ignorance and uproot that source. So that is similar to the saying of using the soldiers of the enemy to catch the leader of the enemy. It also similar to the meaning of the Buddha, is to turn inward instead of turning outward. Turning inward means to turn towards our self nature. And to move away from, the subject of the seeing, the subject of the knowing, and when the subject ends, then the object will end as well, and eventually we could, uproot the source of the ignorance. So our practice, right now, we know a lot about these theories, but sometimes we just feel we just want to go after these principles or theories, and want to, even want to look for more explanation, so that this is still looking outward. And our tendency is like that, always tend to look outward. So we use the consciousness in order to end the source of the ignorance and to reach our achievement. So our practice is to go against our consciousness, our ignorance and attachment, to go inward instead of going outward. To go against here means that our consciousness normally, listen to our seven consciousness and act following it, following the seven consciousness. But now, when we maintain the doubt, then the sixth consciousness, even though it it still, like get the info from the seven consciousness, but it doesn't act on it, because the doubt help our consciousness to know, to be able to know, to hear, to understand anything, but we don't act upon it. So when we be able to treat the sickness of our mind, then all of the illusions and suffering will disappear. So that's why we say our practice is to always to ask the question and maintain the doubt. Do you understand my explanation?
Dạ hiểu ạ. Con xin cảm ơn thầy rất là nhiều
Yes, I
vì
do. Thank you so much.
có cái buổi sinh
Master,
hoạt cũng vẫn còn nghe cái đoạn này của hòa thượng khai thị rồi. Nhưng mà
I used to listen to former Master Whaley talked about this, but I only understand a little bit. But after you explain it again here, I understand it further. Thank you, Master. Kim Yến again.
thưa thầy, con xin phép đại chúng và thầy để con xin
Dear Master and everyone, I would like to ask another question.
công phu tu tập á, thì thầy cũng hay dạy cho chúng con rằng là trong các
You often teach us,
trạo cử hôn trầm,
like within the
cùng với
the 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 normal state that we always met during our practice, like anxiety, sleepiness,
và cải thiện những cái
illusions.
để giữ công phu. Thì thưa thầy làm, nhưng mà cái vọng tâm ý thức của mình nó rất là ghê.
But our consciousness is too strong. When we feel like we are diligent and able to maintain the practice, we sometimes attach to our practice and forget that we are still influenced by this consciousness. Like you taught us, even if we see the Buddha or see any of those illusions, or feel like we feel religion, all of those are still the mind of the thief. Could you please explain again about the mind of the thief from Master Trung Phong, so we can remind all of us that doesn't matter what we experience, we still have to maintain our doubt. Thank you. So when we say to believe in our mind and raise the doubt, when we believe in the mind, it means we could also give rise to the seeds of the prajna. And one day we will be able to see the prajna nature. So to give rise to the Bodhi mind is to give rise to the mind of having nothing to seek, nothing to gain. So to practice meditation is to be able to return to our true nature and to be able to control ourselves, and ultimately to reach the state where we don't seek anything. So the meditation is to get rid of the attachment, but in our normal life, we get challenged by our karmic habits a lot. And sometimes we forget about our habits and we fall into the trap of our habits. For example, sometimes we feel like we diligent, then we start feel happy, feel arrogant. Yeah. And then when we feel like we are diligent, it means like we still within the subject and object. It also means that we fall into the trap of the attachment. That's why Master Chung Phong called that is the mind of the thief. And when we realize that, we feel bad, we feel regretful, we feel like we're wrong, and we feel like we transgress, you know. But all of those consideration are still within consider the mind of the thief. So we need to give rise to the genuine mind to that have nothing to seek, and we need to give rise to a great vow, the genuine vow, in order for us, for that vow to be complete. You know, we have to genuinely practice. So the 9 words to help us to get rid of our attachment. But we have to genuinely practice it, not just trying to suppress our own emotions, you know, and try to fit into those words. Just like a lot of monastics are fearful of you know, the loving desires, because they fear that the loving desires will lead them into reincarnation, and that's why they use the Surangama Sutra. They keep reciting the Surangama Sutra in order to end those thoughts of those desires. But they still get stuck and still have those thoughts of, you know, loving desires either for this person or the other person. You know, it's because they are just trying to suppress their emotion instead of genuinely practicing to transform those emotions. Or even when we talk about following the precepts, you know, a lot of people try so hard to follow all the precepts, you know, but sometimes when there are certain thoughts that arise, you know, they couldn't even suppress anymore, and they ended up violate a lot of precepts.
Cũng tham được nữa, đừng nói là tiền nhiều hay là cái vật giá trị lớn. Nên cái lòng tham nó cũng rất là kinh khủng. Nó phát xuất từ cái gì? Từ cái vô minh với cái ngã chấp đó. Đối với lại cái vấn đề phát nguyện và tu tập của chúng ta đó.
So when we talk about, you know, our vow and our practice, we give rise to the vow, then we have to practice to fulfill the vow.
Cho nên khi mà nó không có cái phân biệt lên để mà nổi cái tâm tham, không có phân biệt lên xấu hay đẹp, nổi cái niệm ái.
And our practice help us to overcome our discrimination, to not give rise to the discrimination. When we don't give rise to those discrimination, we don't consider, you know, good or bad, love or hate, then that way is the way to maintain the precepts. So anytime we have certain desires come up, always remember those words, you know, nothing to seek, nothing to gain, nothing to fear, and return back to our practice. So it's not to suppress our habits or but to overcome that by practicing and transform those habits. So that's why we said whenever thoughts arise, those are the mind of the thieves. But then the thought of the doubt is a different thought than the regular thought. It's the thought of non-abiding, the thought to move away from duality. The seeds of our prajna, different name, all referring to the doubt. So we need to raise that doubt, and to do it is very simple, is to ask the question. That's why we said we have to ask the question until the doubt arises. So the patriot doesn't mean that we have to force the doubt to arise. You know, what I mean is if we genuinely practice and we have the determination to liberate from birth and death, then the doubt will automatically arise. We don't have to, we cannot force it to arise, because doing that meaning we are fall into the trap of seeking. That means we that is the mind of the thief again. That's why we always have to rely on the right Dharma, rely on the wise teachers and the Dharma friends to remind us to not fall into the traps of those karmic habits and to follow the right principle, meaning to get rid of the attachment. So Master Chung Phong referred to, you know, regular thoughts as the mind of the thief, but the other patriarch also referred to those as, you know, those thoughts that not the doubt. Or other patriarch also consider those as, you know, those considering thought, consider this, consider that, consider right, consider wrong. All of those are ignorant thought, you know, but those ignorant thoughts cannot help us end the source of the ignorance. Only the thought of the doubt can help us end the source of the ignorance. But because the doubt has no form, no signs, that's why it's hard for people to grasp, and sometimes they create a lot of imagination and consider that as their doubt, but that is not correct. You understand what I'm saying?
Dạ hiểu ạ, con cảm ơn thầy.
Yes, I
Thầy
do.
chỉ diễn rất là rõ những
You explain very clear,
hay gặp.
uh,
Con xin cảm
you
ơn
know,
rất là nhiều.
the normal sickness that we often encounter. Thank you, Master.
Mời Thành.
Thanh, please.
Kính thưa thầy, khi sáng thầy có nói
In the morning you said
nhất niệm vô minh thầy.
about
Cái vô thủy vô minh á, cũng đối lập với nhau là khi thầy vừa giảng cho
the consciousness or the ignorant thought is
nhã tâm kinh thì sau đó con rất
opposite to the source of our ignorance. And when I hear that, I started thinking about the phrase "no ignorance" in the Heart Sutra, and I feel very touching. Could you please explain more on this?
Nhất niệm vô minh.
So when we talk about, you know, the ignorant thought on the source of the ignorance.
Là bệnh đó. Thì cái chỗ vô thủy vô minh cũng là cái nguồn gốc của vô minh, cái nguồn gốc của ngã chấp, nguồn gốc của sanh tử.
So the source of ignorance is also the source of attachment of birth and death.
Với lại cái đó là một cái ngữ cảnh phương tiện mà Đức Phật như chư tổ chỉ để chúng ta.
But that is like a phrase, a skillful means that the Buddha and the Patriarch used to help us to practice. And the Heart Sutra said, you know, there's no ignorance, and there's no ending of the ignorance. There's no old age or death, and there is no ending of old age or death. That is to talk from the perspective of the prajna. Prajna is non-duality, is non-abiding. That's why when we say the meaning of no ignorance ending, this no here means it's not real. It's not it's not a real existence. And then no old age, no death, or no ending of old age or death. It also means they are not real. They are just dream. So, or when we say there's old age and death, and there's old age and age, the ending, you know, whether there is versus there isn't, those are just duality. Or referring to the theory of prajna, the meaning of prajna for us to enter the theory of the prajna for us to feel encouraged to practice, not for us to understand. Just like during the Buddha time, some people just listen to the first two sentences of the Heart Sutra and they were able to get enlightened. But for us, you know, we use the mind to analyze, to understand. That's why we could not enlightened. Our consciousness is too active, too strong, and it confuses us. It causes us feel scared of not knowing what's right or wrong, not knowing what to go or where to go. So the meaning of the ignorance in the Heart Sutra is
nói về cái tứ đại mình đó, từ cái vô minh mà sinh ra cái tên với lại cái
is talking about the source of everything, including the source of our body, coming from the four elements.
lục nhập tới xúc, xúc tới thọ, thọ duyên ái, ái duyên thủ, thủ duyên hữu. Thì tất cả cái đó là tuần hoàn 12 nhân duyên nó sinh ra giống như.
And also talk about the 12
lục nhập nghĩa là cái
interdependent links
giống như bào thai.
that leads to the fetus, and that leads to the creation of birth.
Tháng thứ ba nhật cục huyết ngưng, 4 tháng mới tượng nên hình đó, rồi 5 tháng ngũ thể hiện sinh rõ ràng. Thì tất cả nó theo thứ lớp, theo cái tuần tự đó, cũng nói về cái từ cái vô minh cho đến già chết.
So all of those orders, all of those stages are to describe, the beginning from the ignorance up until the ending, which is the death. So, and it keeps, reincarnate like that. It's not just us, but it's all of sentient being body is in that reincarnation for countless life, and for anyone who are able to identify even just one link out of those 12 links, they can, escape and break free from that circle. So that is to overcome the middle vehicle. The Heart Sutra also talk about the Four Noble Truths, is to overcome the small vehicle. But the time is up. Goodbye, everyone. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.